it like to be back, Joe?
Yeah, it was great. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Not so much today. Got pretty cold and wet at training, but no, it's been great to be back. Caught up with family, which is nice, and lots of friends yesterday. We didn't train yesterday, so it gave me a bit of a chance to catch up with a few old friends, now foes. So yeah, that's the nature of it.
Yeah, I think Andy Farrell was saying that he's hoping to meet up with you anyway. Did you get around to meeting him?
Not yet, but we might catch up either this evening or a coffee tomorrow. I caught up with him in May, had a good chat. But yeah, Faz has done a great job, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how that manifests itself on Saturday.
Joe, is it a bit overwhelming to be back? I mean, the attention in terms of the media, your first return as a head coach, or is this something you take in your stride?
It was a bit overwhelming at the airport on the way here, especially then the lads give me a hard time. But no, it's actually comfortable. I feel comfortable here. 10 years is a long time, and obviously we still have a home here. My daughter, I think we're probably one of the few loss-making landlords in Dublin, but that's just the way it is. I think it's one of the funny things about Dublin. They talk about kids staying in the home longer. I think our kids just stayed until we left. So it was a pretty good plot that they had, I think.
Joe, it's the 150th anniversary, and there's been a lot of success in Ireland in the last 20 years, of which you've been a massive part. Do you take pride in what you see on Saturday from the home perspective?
Yeah, I think what you want to leave is a legacy, that people are enthusiastic about the game, as much as anything. That the success that has allowed interest to grow, and the playing population to grow, and the health of clubs. I'm just going to catch up with some people from Old Wesley. I'll drop into Terranure while I'm back, and I just love the fact that the sport is not just flourishing at the top end, but we've been really well hosted by Wanderers the last couple of days in the training, and they've got a fantastic facility there that we've really been able to enjoy. So. Yeah, it's always a multifaceted thing and a multi-contributory thing. That it was a lot of people were putting a lot of effort in to help, I suppose, make the game more accessible, and then also make it more successful at the top end.
We saw your fingerprints, or we thought we saw your fingerprints on the All Blacks in the World Cup quarter-final game. We talk a lot about old coaches and players having insights, but yours seem particularly important this week. Do you think it can give you a little bit of an advantage?
I don't know. I've been out of it for a little while, and I probably knew just a couple more of the guys who were playing. The first time I coached against Ireland was the most bizarre coaching experience I think I've ever had. I got a phone call at the end of the Super Rugby. To ask me from Ian Foster what was I doing. I said I'm going to take a bit of a holiday, and he said I've got just the destination for you. So it was into Auckland and a week coaching to get ready for the Irish, the first test in the Irish series, and all the coaching staff had COVID, and the gift that keeps on giving, I got COVID after that, and was locked up. We had Irish friends actually staying with us. We had to move them down the road to my brother's place, it was a really bizarre circumstance. At least by the time we got to the quarter-final of the World Cup, I'd been helping out for a while and was a little bit more comfortable, and I just thought it was one of the best games of rugby I've seen. Certainly not for coaches, because you got your heart in your mouth the whole time. Geordie Barrett holding up Ronan Kelleher was pivotal, but there were so many pivotal moments in that game. So it was, I just think, a great advertisement for really high-level competitive rugby.
Joe, you've obviously gone with the start with Joseph Akusu Sualihi, and also you've given a start to James Slipper, and with Angus Bell resting on the bench. Could you just take us through some of those decisions?
Yeah, Joe's fine. He got a kind of one of those stingers where he had a bit of a dead arm, and we just felt that it was better to get it properly assessed, and we couldn't hold the game up to do that, so we took him out of the game against Scotland, which was disappointing because we'd had a couple of late changes, one with Matt Fassler with injury and one with illness with Jeremy Williams. So it was a pretty disjointed old week in Edinburgh with the frozen grounds. And there's a funny story about us getting in the bus to go to the captain's run and going about 5 metres and then backing up 5 metres and all getting off the bus. So yeah, that was. The boys loved that captain's run because they all went out in the snow. They loved it. Some of them had never seen it before. So that in itself was another really good experience. But for Joseph, he's fully fit, fully able. And I think what you will have seen if you look right through the last 4 games, we have been looking at different combinations, and we've shifted things by 4 or 5 players every week because we've got the eye on the immediate prize, and we want to be as competitive as we can be, but at the same time we know we've got to build some depth in preparation for the British and Irish Lions next year. And so that was always the brief for me coming into the job, because that's a massive series for the Wallabies and for the Australian public, because when the masses come in and the expats that are already there, I just think it has the opportunity to really promote the game and be a fantastic occasion for competitive rugby.
Joe, when you got the Wallabies job, you talked about how important it was for rugby to have the Wallabies back as a top force in the game. Do you feel you're getting there? Where do you think you are now? Do you feel as if progress is being made, particularly over the last month? Yeah,
I feel like I'm paddling hard, but I'm not necessarily going forward. But I think we're keeping our head above water, and so we've demonstrated we can be competitive with some really top teams. 31-28 in the first Bledisloe Cup game. We led just before half time. That was a bit of a killer, letting in a try in Wellington just before half time. But until then, it was a very, very competitive game, and we have slipped off in a couple of second halves, which is frustrating. But at the same time, we're trying to build to 80-minute performances, and we're trying to build depth so that if we get a ripple like we did last week, that we can still try to stay on top of the water. So we're not necessarily, I wouldn't say flying through it, but we are managing to keep our head above it, I think. And so there's been progress, I believe. We were quite confident in the progress we were making, but sometimes when it's not reflected on scoreboard results, there's always an element of frustration. But the other thing, we just wanted to raise the profile and excitement around the game, and we've had some really super messaging during this tour from people at home, really supporting the team, and that's a little bit of encouragement, because it was very flat this time last year. The 2 wins over Portugal and Georgia, but then big losses to the likes of Wales and missing out obviously on the playoffs at the World Cup was very deflating, and the players they were quite fractured at the start. I didn't really know them at the start. I didn't even know the staff. There was only 2 staff really from the year before, so it's been a complete makeover, and so we're still getting to know each other really.
Joe, you had such a big influence on so many of these Irish players, and even earlier this week, Paul O'Connell was saying they still reference things you would have coached around areas like the breakdown. But in terms of style of play and game plan, in what ways is Ireland team different to the team you left in 2019?
I think they're not that different. I think Jamison Gibson Park gives them so much speed in how quickly he arrives and lifts the ball and distributes it at the breakdown. I know it's something that Connor could do for us, but we probably use Connor's kicking game a little bit more. Not that Jamison's got a bad kicking game, it's just that people tend to play to their strengths, and then as a coach you're trying to maximise the strengths you have in the team. So, and a big part of it was talking to the players and seeing how they wanted to play, how they felt they were capable of best playing. And it's been the same with the Wallabies. You know, we sat down and we had a leadership group that we put together, and we nutted out amongst us how do we best utilise the resources we've got and get people re-energised about it. As I said, it was quite deflated, and we wanted to try to re-energise the playing group. And the leaders have done a great job of that. And you know, when you've got experience like the likes of Mike Cron and Laurie Fisher, you know, you've got Jeff Parling, who's a real kind of scientist around line out options, and Owen Toolan, who I first worked with here in 2013 with the Irish team, you know, and he left to go to Australia just after that, and 10 years later you end up working together again.
Joe, if it feels like a sort of homecoming for you, what's your sense of Saturday and stepping back, you personally, into the Aviva? Will there be apprehension, or do you feel the overriding emotion will just be focused on winning here?
Yeah, there'll be apprehension because I have that every week. I even have it before training. Geez, I hope we don't break someone today. I hope the boys get some confidence and some rhythm here today. And so I try to be pretty transactional, pretty pragmatic on game day, but there'll be some emotion in it for me for sure.
In terms of the legacy, you mentioned it there, and we've spoken to Paul O'Connell just now, and he's saying he takes so many pages out of your book. But I don't know if you've seen or read, but Johnny Sexton saying effectively, right up until his last game, the voice he had in his head was your voice. And I wonder just how that makes you feel when, as iconic a rugby player as someone like Sexton says, you have left the biggest single blueprint on his game that any coach has.
Geez, I feel sorry for him. If he had my voice still in his head, hell, I mean, I worked with Johnny for 10 years, so it's probably the longevity of the relationship, and also that we would bounce backwards and forwards with ideas. I really enjoyed the Leinster period because we had some really good contributors to how we play the game with Brian O'Driscoll. Isa Nathaiwa was a big influence as well, and even I think both Dricko and Johnny would say that he was influential in that team, and even just around, you know, being a blunt force instrument, Brad Thorne. There was a whole lot of guys in that era that were really influential. Sean O'Brien as a player was freakishly good through those Leinster years, and unfortunately we didn't probably get to see the maximum of him in a green jersey, but the blue jersey he was virtually unstoppable in a couple of those years. So I think all those guys have helped mould Johnny and allow him to probably understand the game, understand himself, and understand that he needed to contain himself a few times, and sometimes he just didn't anyway. But that was part of what really was a catalyst for the team and the passion in the team. And he brought that, but he also brought the cold-blooded kind of clear decision making that you need. So, geez, if he's still saying that, I feel sorry for him. But I would have to say that he was fantastic to work with. A really incredible, skillful and competitive, with a fantastic understanding of the game. He was great.
Excuse me. I was just going to say, Cian Edmett, you've obviously given a debut, and also, I was just wondering on your thoughts on Sam Prendergast, who obviously is a guy, I'm sure you've seen a lot of footage, and a bit like Sexton, a wonderful playmaker. Yeah,
I was talking to Richie Murphy 2 years ago, and he was saying, wow, this kid can play. And so Richie had that time with the under-20s, and they were hugely successful. So, you know, I still look at Ireland and I think, wow, there's all these kids coming through that were very successful in the under-20s. I think they went back-to-back Grand Slams in the 20s, which is a hell of an effort, and then got through to, you know, those top rungs in the Global Junior World Cup. So that's probably he's at the apex of that group of young players who are really exciting. But again, he got his debut obviously against Fiji, and I thought did really well. And Faz must have thought he went all right as well, I suppose, because he's put him back in against us, and that's a real confidence. I'm not saying it's ever going to be easy for him, but imagine having Jamison Gibson Park and Bundy Okia, inside outside, Robbie Henshaw right there, Caelan Doris further in. He's on a really good hinge of experience, I think. So while his experience isn't great, I think the people around him, they've got fantastic experience.
Joe, what are pipelines like in Australia? You're talking about the Irish supply chain. What are they like in Australia?
Yeah, they're a little bit clogged at the moment, and the pipeline has become a little bit fragmented and probably narrow. And what we're trying to do by getting people excited about the top end is probably capture a few more of the players that may otherwise have gone to rugby league. It's a pretty constant threat. There are 18 rugby league teams that play in the NRL, not all of them based in rugby areas or in Australia, but that's a constant battle. Obviously, Joseph, even being over here, experiencing what he's experiencing over here, it's very hard to do that in the NRL. Rugby is a much more, I think, global game. So he's been pretty excited about getting out and getting into the rugby circle, and so there may be other youngsters coming through the school system at the moment, just like Joseph did. He went through King's School, played rugby union right through school, but was also captured by the Roosters rugby league team and played really well for them. So we'd love to get a few more of those guys, but the players who actually come out of schools and are highly competitive, and even I went to a club that had 6 senior teams, the most senior teams I'd ever had in Sydney, and there are kind of green shoots, and I suppose it's our responsibility as the Wallabies to make sure that we can provide a bit of sunlight for those green shoots.
Joe, could you give me your favourite Cian Healy story? Just on the weekend in question.
Oh wow, yeah. Well,
that's predictable.
One of my favourite stories will be seeing him on Saturday run out, and seeing. I was watching and seeing Drico applaud him. Cian is the sort of guy I remember in a pre-season. He was doing the gym the same as everyone else, and he got massive so fast. He is exceptional, a physical specimen, and so we had to, a bit like Andrew Porter, is that both those guys, you have to lock them out of the gym as best you can, otherwise they just become behemoths. And one of the things with Cian is that he's so agile, and he was so dynamic as a young man. When I first got to Leinster, probably a memorable moment was we were playing Claremont in a semi-final to make the final against Ulster, and it was in Bordeaux, in France. You're up against it. Claremont were at the height of their powers, and we played a set play with Isaac Boss going around the back, and the pass from Ricard Strauss going back into Rob Carney, and there's Cian on his shoulder trying to overtake him. He's that sort of athlete. He was lethal close to the line. The opposition couldn't stop him, and we couldn't get the ball off him. He'd just grab it, roll his sleeves up, and go to work. So, yeah, there's a few others, but I'll leave those.
Last couple.
He can put them in his book.
Did you ever take you without flank? Draco in terms of gaps?
No, I massively respect it, but it looks like Lou said he's up against the caps record holder for the Wallabies as well. So I think that's a great thing, and they're both loose head props, you know. So maybe there's something to be said about loose head props. They know how to get that longevity. So I think with Slips playing in the weekend and Ken Healy, I'm pretty sure that we'll catch up afterwards, and those two will just share a bit of hydration.
Last one with John, please.
Joe, I was just wondering, Tian Admet, you're giving him the debut, and what is it you've seen in him that makes you think he's ready for such an important test match?
Yeah, he's grown in confidence. He's hugely commits to knowing his role and trying to learn from the others around him. Again, for us, having Len Nitkato outside him, Jake Gordon, there's good experience there, and Tate McDermott, who's captained the Wallabies, albeit he's only a young man. So there'll be good experience around him. And I think one of the things for us is that we came on tour, and amongst the coaches, we were pretty committed to make sure that everyone who was originally selected in that tour squad was going to take the field. He will be our 19th debutant for the season, which is an attempt to grow that player pool. I think one of the things that I learnt in Leinster is that in my first year I was so bitter they take half your players, but then you found kids like Geordie Murphy and these young men that were just so keen to get through and get involved, and Sean O'Brien gets taken for Ireland, and suddenly Josh van der Fleer gets a start, and 5 years on, Josh van der Fleer is at the top of his game, and unfortunately 8 years on, he's still at the top of his game, and I'm on the other side. So, those are the opportunities that emerge. And I just think with the Wallabies, we wanted to try to really grow the group this year, galvanise the group as well, so that we can be as competitive as we can next season. And I honestly believe that it will be a fantastic occasion next year. And I know that Faz and I having a coffee in May, we talked about, hoping that it would be the right sort of spectacle. So I think both coaches are committed to it, and I think both teams will be committed to that as well.